and it's so wonderful to see all of you and those of you who are online. I wish you a happy Easter. Thank you for joining us, and we have many, many people here in person. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Reverend Tim Lytle. I'm the senior minister here. And wow, happy Easter. Happy Easter. All right. Now, today we're looking at breaking the mold. Breaking the mold. Now, that's passage of Scripture about Mary Magdalene meeting Jesus in the garden. But, she had been crying. She didn't know what was going to happen. We know kind of the end of the story, but she's in the middle of the story. She doesn't know what's happening. She comes to the tomb. She's wondering how she's going to roll the stone away because there's a big stone in front of the tomb. This tomb had been hewed out of rock. She wondered, how am I going to roll that back? But she wanted to be there. She was so devoted to Jesus. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, a few women, and one of his male disciples, John the Beloved, stayed with Jesus during the crucifixion. The rest of the disciples hid and locked themselves away. They were afraid of what might happen to them, that it might happen to them as well. So they were in hiding. But the women and John the Beloved were the ones who stayed. And Mary Magdalene was the one who wanted to go to the tomb and anoint further the body of Jesus and to take care of the body of Jesus. She didn't care what happened to her. She was so in love with serving God, she didn't care what happened to her. And so she's weeping. The stone had been rolled away. The angels are asking her, why are you crying? And she's wondering, where have you put the body of Jesus? And there's this person standing beside her asking her, why are you crying? And she thinks it's the gardener. And she says, can you tell me where you put him? I will take the body. I will take care of him. And then he says her name, Mary. And in that moment, she looks up at him and realizes this is Jesus. And she calls him Rabboni, which is Hebrew for rabbi. This was her rabbi, her teacher. They were Jewish. He was a Jewish rabbi. And Jesus says, don't hold on to me, I got some more stuff to do, and I'm going to be ascending to the Father. But he gave her a message to tell the disciples. I'm going to tell you something here from Scripture that most churches don't tell you, even though it's right in Scripture. The first person that Jesus commissioned to preach to the disciples was Mary Magdalene. It's right there in Scripture. He instructs her what to tell the disciples. Had you ever noticed that before? Yeah, some of you had. Had you ever noticed that she was the first one to whom Jesus appeared? She was the first one that he instructed to teach the disciples. She was the first one, if you will, to be, I hope you know this term, to be in the disciplic succession. That is, she was the first one that Jesus appointed to carry on the parampara. That is, I'm using some Sanskrit names with you here. She was the first one to carry on the gospel, to carry on his tradition, to take on his path. It's right there in Scripture. But I've never heard this in a Christian church. It's right there. Jesus was always breaking the mold. Jesus didn't go with all the social conformity. Jesus had women disciples and men disciples, and they traveled together. That was unheard of in that day. Jesus gathered to him the people who were considered to be outcasts, sinners, prostitutes. They became his closest disciples, and there's good evidence. Now, some people, there's different ways of looking at this, but there's good evidence to indicate that Mary Magdalene may have been a prostitute. That does not make her bad. Jesus fully loved her and cared about her, and she fell so in love with Jesus and with God that her life transformed from the inside out. She became the first disciple that he commissioned to preach. He was always breaking the mold. People who think that Jesus is just about staying in line and doing the right thing don't know Jesus. Jesus was always breaking the mold. Jesus was always inviting in and loving the people who were outcast by others. That's the rock upon which he built that church. So what are some of the other things, the molds that he was breaking? And by this, I mean the programming that we've been raised with. How many of you here know that you've been programmed? Those of you who aren't raising your hand, you have been anyway. One of the ways in which you've been programmed is the whole idea of death. We have this scary image of death. We have so identified with our body, we think that we're just the body, and then if something happens to the body, then it happens to us. Rather than realizing what we really are is a spirit soul that was never born, will never die, and Jesus demonstrates this in the resurrection. They thought it was the end. This last Friday, we had our Good Friday service. We had some wonderful readings and meditations. And the disciples thought this was going to be the end when Jesus died. They thought that was it. Have you ever felt like you were at a dead end? Have you ever felt like, oh man, things are just messed up. Where am I going to go from here? Now, I don't know. Maybe you've never felt that way. And in a way, I sort of feel sorry for you if you've never felt that way. Because there's nothing like coming to the end of your rope to find out it's not the end. There's nothing like hitting bottom to find out there's much more to life. It's one of the reasons I love addicts so much. They've hit bottom. They know that this material condition is not going to provide everything they need. They know that there is something more. There's a spiritual resource. Any ever been to an amusement park? How many people have ever been to an amusement park? Some of you haven't. I feel sorry for you. All right, amusement parks. My son and I used to travel the country to test and ride roller coasters. We would keep track. We would, point out the positives and the negatives of the roller coasters. Have you kids ever ridden roller coasters? Yeah? Do you like them? Yeah? All right. No? They can be a little scary, right? I remember as a little kid going up to the top of it just kept going and going and going. I'm like, oh my goodness. And you get at the top and then you're looking straight down. It just scared me as a kid. But then my son and I decided, let's become roller coaster connoisseurs. And we went around the country and decided which ones had the best of this and that. But there came a time in my life where amusement parks and roller coasters started to make me sick. There came a time in my life where spinning around and going upside down and going through loops and going up high and then dropping low real fast would just make me sick. The material condition, the material world is kind of like that. It has lots of amusements. It has lots of fun things until it makes you sick. Until you find out, oh, it really can't fully satisfy. It really can't. Jesus taught us that there is much more to life than just the material conditioning, just the programming. In the resurrection, the stone is being rolled away, the stone of the programming of death. That we are eternal. We are eternal spirit soul. Who you really are was never born and will never die. And when you know that, you won't be afraid of death. The second stone to be rolled away, the second mold to be broken, is that of fear. Fear, anxiety. Wow. I remember during the pandemic looking at statistics. It was an incredible number of people. I'm trying to remember the exact percentage, but it was something like 45% of the population was struggling with anxiety and depression. 45%. That's a lot of people, right? There's still lots of fear and anxiety. Have you felt it? I can always count on you to give me an honest answer. Thank you. So the second stone to be rolled away is the stone of fear. Jesus breaks the mold of fear. We no longer have to be afraid. Over and over in Scripture, people are told, be not afraid. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now, we love all churches, we love all traditions, but it just seems weird to me that there's so many traditions who teach us to be afraid. When God said, don't be afraid. When Jesus is rising up, he's saying, there are no circumstances in your life that can hold you down. There are no circumstances in your life that can defeat you. There are no circumstances in your life that are permanent. All of that is temporary. What we do is we rely on the one power, the one source. We rely on the presence of God, the eternal. Then we are not defeated. And when you know that you cannot be defeated, when you know that there's nothing that can really destroy you, dilute you, divide you, diminish you in any way, when you know that you are the self-livingness of the presence of God, you roll away the stone of fear. The third stone. A lot of people wonder, what is this life about? What is the meaning of it? I mean, yay, we get born, we cry, we go to school, we get jobs, we raise families, then we die. What is this life about? Jesus breaks the mold, breaks the programming that this life is just about the material condition, and breaks the mold of this sense of there not being any meaning. Because there's real meaning in following the path of Jesus, which is about loving devotional service to God. That's where we find our real, true constitutional position, our real, true way of being. And that's what Mary Magdalene fully lived into. Mary Magdalene fully lived into devotional service. What is your life about? Are you ready to roll away the stone of death, roll away the stone of fear, roll away the stone of not knowing what this life is about, and really fully live into that presence of God that is living itself as you? Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to roll away the stone? Thank you. Now you can stay in there. You can stay in that tomb behind the stone. No. Roll it away. There's nothing to hold you back. I want to read a passage of Scripture to you. This comes from Romans chapter 12, which Paul is writing. And this comes from the Phillips translation. He says, with eyes wide open, by the mercies of God, I beg you, as an act of intelligent worship, give God your bodies as a living sacrifice, consecrated to God and accepted. Don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold, but let God remold your minds from within. Some of you have been under the squeeze. Some of you have been squeezed into the mold, the programming, the mold of this world. It doesn't feel good, does it? Again, it's like that amusement park where you get a little sick after a while. I love it. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Here's another translation of that passage from Peterson's The Message. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. The resurrection of Jesus is not just about Jesus, and we celebrate that today, but it's about your resurrection. It's about you rising up to new life. You may wonder, have you ever wondered what's the deal with the Easter bunny and the eggs? I found that very confusing as a child. I mean, even as a child, I knew that bunnies don't lay eggs. I knew that the bunnies are mammals. And mammals typically don't lay eggs, right? So I was a little confused, and so Easter morning, my dad would get us up. They would have hidden Easter eggs around the house, around the yard. They would have gotten us some special gifts. And I thought, this is very cool, but very confusing. Because I didn't understand, what is it with eggs? What is it about the bunny and all that? Well, they all represent new life. New life. Bunnies quickly make new bunnies. It's true. So it's about new life. And eggs represent new life. It's all about new life. Are you ready for new life? Are you ready for that resurrection, new life to spring up as you? To live as you? Are you ready for that presence, that power that's living as you, the Christ? To rise up, to roll away those stones, and to rise up as you. All right, thank you. And all of you who are willing to answer this question, please answer it. Are you ready to roll away the stones of fear in your life? Yes. Are you ready for new life? Yes. Let's do it together. Happy Easter. Thank you. I just invite you to take a deep breath as we breathe into this moment, as we breathe into new life. We know that there's only one power and one presence, active as our lives and as the universe. God. So we tune into this source, rolling away the stone of death, rolling away the stone of fear, rolling away the stone of confusion and feeling lost in life, knowing, centered in God, we are aligned with God and we live from this loving presence that is God. God is actually living as us.